Hello and welcome back to another video of the Brainy Heart. In this video, we'll be talking about the brainstem. In this video, I will be giving an overview of the brainstem, and I'll also be talking about the cranial nerves found in the brainstem. And not only that, I'll also talk about the specific jobs of the cranial nerves and the different parts of the brainstem. So, let's get right into it. So let's start off with the overview of the brainstem. To give you a perspective on where the brainstem is, it's right under the diencephalon, which is right here, and it's right under the lateral ventricles. And if you want to learn more about the ventricles in your brain, check out my video right here. Anyways, coming back to the brainstem is like a bridge with many exits. And this bridge is connecting the cerebrum to the spinal cord. And the exits represent the cranial nerves that can be found in your brainstem itself. So your brainstem not only carries out its own functions, but it also connects the cerebrum to the spinal cord. The brainstem is divided into three different parts. The topmost part is the midbrain, or the mesencephalon. And then right under that is the pons, P-O-N-S. And finally, we have the medulla oblongata. So some people call it the medulla oblongata, some people call it the medulla oblongata, and some people just call it the medulla or medulla. However you want to call it, it's up to you. That was the overview of the brainstem. Just remember that it's a bridge with a lot of exits, and it's a bridge that connects the brain and the spinal cord.
That was it for the overview. Now let's talk about the cranial nerves.
In this picture, we are looking at the ventral view of the brainstem. You have the midbrain over here. I'm just gonna call it MB. You have your pons over here. Then you have your medulla oblongata over here, which I'll call MO. And this region over here is the diencephalon, or the thalamus.
There are overall 12
cranial nerves, but I'll skip number 1 and number 11 because they're not really that important, but we'll go over all of these, and then later in the video we'll go into more depth. So now let's just start with the labeling. And remember, there is sensory information coming in and motor information going out. So if I draw a arrow like this, it means it's a sensory nerve, and if I draw a arrow like this, then it's a motor nerve, and if I draw something like this, it's both a motor and a sensory nerve. In your thalamus, or your diencephalon, you have your optic nerve, and that is cranial nerve number 2. And then in your midbrain, you have your oculomotor and your trochlear nerves, and both of these are motor. So you have, just in case my handwriting's bad, I'm going to display all of these nerves on the left side of the screen, so feel free to take a look at either the typed out version or my written out version, up to you. And then in the pons, we have the trigeminal nerve, which is both a sensory and a motor, and that's the 5th cranial nerve. In the junction of the pons and the medulla oblongata, you have 3 cranial nerves. So you have the abducens, which is a motor cranial nerve. You have your facial nerve, which is both a motor and sensory. And the final cranial nerve that's in the junction, vestibulus cochlea, which it's a very long word, but it's a sensory nerve. And the vestibulus cochlea is the 8th nerve, cranial nerve. And remember, these 3 cranial nerves, number 6, 7, and 8, are going to be in the junction, which is this area. Since I couldn't fit everything over there, I had to do it a little bit below where the actual nerves are, but just so you know, that's where they're found. So coming into the medulla itself, we have 3 more cranial nerves, and the first one is the glossopharyngeal nerve. So this is number 9, cranial nerve number 9, and it's sensory and motor. And then you have your vagus nerve, which is nerve number 10, and it's also a sensory and motor nerve, and it's nerve number 10. And finally, we have a motor nerve, which is the hypoglossal nerve, which is nerve number 12.
So that's it for the cranial nerves, but I did not mention the olfactory nerve and the accessory nerve. The olfactory nerve is cranial nerve number 1, and the accessory nerve is cranial nerve number 11. I didn't mention them since they weren't that important and they weren't part of the brainstem, but if you want to learn more, there you go.
Now, I want to talk about the midbrain in detail. So, the midbrain actually takes care of 2 main reflexes, the accommodation reflex and the pupillary reflex. The accommodation reflex has to do with your eye movement. As we know, we have the optic nerve in the diencephalon, and in the midbrain we have 2 motor nerves, which are the oculomotor and the trochlear nerve. And your accommodation reflex happens when the optic nerve brings in the sensory information, and then the oculomotor sends out the motor information. And the pupillary light reflex
Is when your eyes contract when a bright light is shined at them. The sensory information is taken in by the optic nerve, and then the motor information is sent out by the oculomotor nerve.
So those were the 2 main reflexes. The trochlear nerve comes into play in various other reflexes that the midbrain is responsible for, but these were the 2 main ones. The midbrain is also responsible for wakefulness and consciousness, so it takes care of the circadian rhythm, and a damage to this region might cause a person to be unconscious for a certain amount of time. So that was the midbrain, and now let's move on to the pons. The pons has 1 main nerve, and then the pon and medulla oblongata junction has 3 other nerves. But I'm gonna count that as the nerves in the pons just for the sake of this video. So we have the trigeminal, which is sensory and motor. We have the obducens nerve. We have the facial nerve, and we have the vestibulocochlear nerve. So the pons takes care of 3 main reflexes. The first one is the jaw jerk reflex, is basically the movement of your jaw muscles, and the sensory information comes in through the trigeminal, and then the trigeminal again takes in the motor information, and then it just tells the jaw muscles to close the jaw or close your mouth. So your trigeminal takes in the sensory information that the mouth is open, and then it takes out the motor information and tells your jaw muscles to close the mouth. And the second reflex is the corneal blink reflex. So this is when you rub your cornea, you are going to blink. And the sensory information for this reflex comes in from the trigeminal nerve, and then it goes out the facial nerve. And the final one is the tensor tympani and stapedius reflex. And this is a reflex that happens when there's a loud noise going into your ears. So this reflex basically is sensed by the vestibulocochlear nerve, and this nerve senses the loud noise, and then it tells the brain, and then the brain tells the trigeminal nerve to dampen the sound or contract the ear muscles so that your cochlea doesn't get, or your cochlea or your eardrum doesn't get damaged. So those are the three main reflexes that the Pons deals with. Your Pons also deals with respiration, swallowing, posture, and your cardiac vascular activities like your heartbeats and your heart rhythms. So that was the Pons in a nutshell. Now let's move on to the medulla. So let's move on to the medulla oblongata. So the two reflexes over here are the gag and swallowing reflex, the cough and sneeze reflex. Both of these reflexes are controlled by the glossopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. The medulla oblongata is also the site where decussation happens. So that's where your nerve fibers coming in from the brain cross over and then go into your spinal cord. And the sensory information coming in from your spinal cord crosses over and goes into the brain. So it basically creates an X. Your medulla oblongata also plays a critical role in the respiration and cardiac activity of your body. That was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned from it. I'm always open to comments, questions, and or suggestions. Be sure to check out my blog at brainyhearts.wordpress.com. This is the Brainy Heart signing off. I'll catch you later in the next video.